This week I had the great pleasure of interviewing Elijah Carbajal, and he is a Title I reading specialist, and he is in the state of New Mexico. He also is the podcast host for Shut Up and Teach, and he is writing a new book published by EduMatch Publishing. And I can't wait to have this conversation with him about teaching with excellence, the origin of his podcast, and the Teach Better 22 conference. Welcome back, everyone, to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. Aspire listeners, I'm so excited for this conversation because I have a fantastic podcaster, soon-to-be author, and educator, Elijah, with me, and I'm just so pumped because he is so passionate about so many different topics. I know he's going to provide a lot of wisdom in this conversation. Elijah, thank you so much for joining me on the Aspire to Lead podcast.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's a real pleasure to be here. I appreciate, what you do for, in your role, the Teach Better team, and then of course the podcast and the, your book, Aspire to Lead. So yeah, it's a real honor to be here.
Oh, honor is all mine, sir. And I'm super excited to learn a little bit more about you and your journey. So if you wouldn't mind sharing about your educational and leadership journey.
Yeah. So my journey is a little interesting because, I'm a public school teacher, but I actually was homeschooled kindergarten through 12th grade. Literally my first time stepping into a public school classroom was my first day of student teaching. So talk about culture shock, right? But, it was one of those things like, I obviously stumbled and, my mentor teachers were there to kind of coach me through and all that. But I remember there was one day in particular where my teacher was out and the sub didn't show up. So I just took over the class and just ran it. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time that it was like, oh, okay, I think I can do this. I should probably stick this out, But, graduated from, University of New Mexico and, got a teaching job here in Albuquerque and learned a lot, over the last, 9 years. They haven't all been in Albuquerque. I've been in a couple different districts, but I am back in Albuquerque and working now as a reading interventionist. But as far as the leadership journey, before I've had the opportunity to serve as a leader in the role of instructional council member. So I was the fourth grade representative on the instructional council team. And, that really inspired me. I really enjoyed and appreciated being able to kind of help other teachers and represent other people. During that time, I learned a lot about really servanthood and like serving with humility and all that. And so that's been something that I try to lead with, is always lead with humility, and lead with, appreciation as well. You don't have to be, the principal to appreciate somebody at your school. You don't have to be the site leader, to be a positive impact and lead in different ways. That's actually where I'm at. And I'm continuing to study this idea of leadership through different books, podcasts, obviously like yours. And of course, I've read your book before, which was a big impact on me and really inspiring. So just a little bit about me.
It's awesome, man. And I appreciate those kind words. I want to talk about the homeschool piece because, some folks are like, oh, homeschool, they might have a negative connotation, or some people absolutely love it. They think it's the best experience ever. For myself, I've done homeschool as a student. I was in a private school as a student, and then also public education. So I feel like for myself, I've had all three realms. But, for yourself, how was it a experience that helped you as a teacher?
So first of all, shout out to my mom because there were six of us. Wow. She homeschooled all six of us, K through 12. Mm-hmm. Talk about dedication and, just love and
for sure.
Nurturing and all that. But, I think she modeled that part there of like leading with calmness and leading. And that's one thing that I've been told is like, you lead with calmness, like you have a very calm demeanor. And I'm convinced that I get that from my mom. That's just the way she was, and I think back to my homeschool experience. Yeah, there were times where I'd like watch a school bus drive by and be like, man, I want to ride the bus, or like, I wonder what public school is all about. But I wouldn't say that it ever like was oh man, I hate that I'm homeschooled. I still enjoyed the experience. And my mom was actually a licensed teacher. She was a special education teacher for about 7 years before her and my dad began to start their family.
Hmm.
So she had that background in education, which really helped. I've known some homeschoolers who had a little bit tougher time because their family didn't necessarily have that education background. But everybody's experience can be a little different. I, for one, appreciated it. I really enjoyed growing up just being around my family,
Hmm.
learning with them, just, being around them. Obviously you have lunch at the same time as everybody when you're homeschooled. So you go out and play together. And so it was really a good experience for me. I will say what my mom says, and that homeschooling is not for everyone,
Yep.
and that it is definitely a calling. It's not just something one day that you decide, hey, I'm going to homeschool my kids, or, not to go super negative here, but I know there's this big push to like get your kids out of public school and homeschool them, and there's a big movement for that right now. And I would just advise people that listening, that if that's something you're considering, that's, between you and your family.
Yep.
But I will stick to my mom's words on that, if you feel called to do it. But if you don't and have doubts about it, there's nothing wrong with, public education.
No, not
We
at
have
all.
good, we have great teachers in public education, great resources.
Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And I would agree. There is kind of a movement and a push, but you have to understand that there's a lot of dedication, a lot of work that goes with the homeschool piece. So, yeah, I think those are great words of wisdom. I want to talk to you about, because we've had some great conversations about wanting to be a great teacher, right? And right now, I don't know if you're on social media as much as I, but there's a little bit of a negative turn right now of people burnt out, or this time is tough for people to go back to school as far as getting prepared for the next year. So what is your belief as far as wanting to be a great teacher and being the best version of ourselves?
When I think about being a great teacher, I think back to Teach Like a Pirate by Dave Burgess.
Yeah.
And I think it's in there. He says, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says it's okay to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to want to be great. It's okay to say you want to be great. And that was the first time I'd really like thought about that as far as like education. Like I've always wanted to do my job well. And I've always wanted to be, responsible and professional with my duties and, my service to kids and families. But that thought of like being great hadn't really honestly crossed my mind until then. And then I started to think about it more, and I'm like, well, what's the big deal? Like you think about any other profession, and they do their job with pride, and they do it with greatness and excellence. And I'm like, well, why can't teaching be the same way?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we strive for greatness as teachers? And when you put that, and you think about books like Kids Deserve It, and these books that really talk about that our kids need teachers who are great. Our kids deserve a great teacher. So that's something that honestly has been on my mind. It's been on my wife's mind as well. We've had lots of conversations about that recently. We look around, and there's a lot of excuses that are made, from people, whether it's within our state or out of state, like you said, on social media,
Yep.
that uses like, oh, we're a poor state, or we this is going on, whatever, we're burnt out, COVID, all these things. And those are legitimate concerns. I don't want to minimize those or anything. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but what can you do with what you have? If you can take what you have and use it effectively and use it with excellence and turn things around with just what you have, right? Then that speaks volumes, because your kids, like, you can't control everything, right? I can't control how much money the state gives our schools, and there's a lot of things like that are just out of our control. But I can control my own professional development. I can go out and find the professional development I need to be a better teacher for my students and for my school, right? I can find the books, the podcasts, the conferences, all those things. That's something that just about every teacher can do, is go out and look for something. There's podcasts are completely free, as long as you got the app for it, right?
Yeah.
Or YouTube channels, there's a lot of options out there for teachers who are really looking. I think it was Ray Heward who talks about, podcasting is her professional development.
Yep.
Listening to podcasts and hosting podcasts with other people, and just learning from the guests and all that. So I think there's legitimate concerns and there's legitimate issues. Yes, we need to fund schools. Like, I'm not saying don't fund schools or that's not a problem, But what I am saying is we can't always use that as an excuse when there are things that we can do to improve ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I go back to our kids deserve the best teacher that we can possibly be. It's do what you are capable of doing. Do what's, don't go beyond your means and don't stretch yourself too thin. Do what you are, what's right for you. Get that professional development and improve yourself.
I want to talk about something you stated earlier about every educator is a leader, right? It doesn't matter of your title, you can have an influence within your building. So if you see a need somewhere, what should they do to inspire change?
I always say start with your classroom, right? You start with your kids and all that. But once you start to see those things, regardless of what it is, even if it seems like, well, that's something small, but if it's something you can do, that's, a need that needs to be filled. One of the things that I'm stepping out a little bit. I'm not the most tech savvy person, but I saw a need this year that, at our school, they said we need someone to be the webmaster and, kind of keep our website up to date and up to speed and, handle social media pages that we have. I've done leadership before, but, moving back to Albuquerque, I'm in a new school and all that, it's easy to be like, no, let me get my feet settled first.
Yep.
But I really felt like, what, there's a need. This won't stretch me too thin, but, this is a need that I can fill. It's something small, but it's important. And so I would encourage teachers, regardless of what that need is, if you have the capability and you have the means to fill that need, I would encourage you to do so. The other thing I would encourage everyone to do is just be present. Be present, be seen, be visible. Yep. Not just to be seen, but like be active as you're, be active as you're being seen. If you're out, if you don't normally go out to bus duty, go out to bus duty every now and then and help kids get on the bus or say goodbye, wave goodbye to your kids and all that, help them out. Just being seen and being that, being visible and people saying, hey, this person is helpful. Nobody asked them, but I saw them come and be helpful. Right. They'll recognize that and respect you for that. But yeah, that's kind of a couple things that I would suggest, really.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
All right, Elijah, I want to shift a little bit because you talked about podcasts being PD in your pocket, if you will. So let's talk about your podcast. Shut Up and Teach is your podcast. And I want to learn a little bit about the background. Where did that podcast come from? Where the idea, and why did you take the initiative to start this project?
So Shut Up and Teach actually came from a moment in my teaching career where, I was having kind of a rough moment. I think it was a really stressful time, like one of those, like everything is due on this day, and like, of course there's the everyday stresses and, I'm pretty open about, my mental health and all that, dealing with anxiety and depression. Yep. It was just one of those days. Every teacher is gonna have these days. And what I found myself doing was like, I looked at the clock, there was like an hour before kids showed up. And I'm like, I either got to go home, like call a sub and go home, or I got to stay here. And it wasn't like this big audible voice or anything like that. It was just something that it was just a thought. And the thought was just shut up and teach. And it was like, okay. And it wasn't one of those like, okay, the problem just vanished. The problem was still there. All the stresses were still there. But it was like, okay, if I shut up in this moment, if I put that to the side, I can deal with it after school, right? I don't need to bring that negative energy into school. I definitely don't need to talk about this with my kids or, be an emotional wreck in front of my kids. Like, I can deal with this, but right now I need to shut up and teach because my kids need me to be here. So that's kind of where the idea of Shut Up and Teach came from. Now, I do want to say this. I'm not saying that you can never take a sick day or a mental health day. I take a few every year, it's just natural for me to do that. And it's important for us to do that. If you feel that, I really can't be here, maybe you take a day off, and see how you feel the next day, come back refreshed, get your mind in the, in the right mindset. But, there are some times where we will just have to put some things aside, and the bad energy, but it also, it's not just like the bad attitude, the bad energy, but for me, it's also, there's another side to the coin where I believe that, it's also shut up and teach with best practices, shut up and teach with excellence. It's like, hey, let's put aside the worksheet that we've been using for 10 years and let's try something different. Like, I know this experience is going to take a lot of prep work, but your kids deserve this. So let's shut up and teach.
Right.
So it's not just a call to, a positive attitude and all that. It's a call to excellence, really. So I wanted to share that message with as many people as I could. I was blogging at the time, and I think I wrote a blog about it. But, I started thinking of different ways to, spread the message. And, I wanted to dabble with podcasting and try it out. And, I've been doing it now for, a year or so or something like that. For me, I love it because it is PD. It's a way to, I have short reflections, no more than like 15 minutes or so.
Right.
And so it's a great way for me to share information with others, but it's also a way for me to learn because I do have guests on the show. And so we can, have conversations and really learn and grow from each other. So yeah, it really has been a great way for me to connect with others and just, meet new people and learn and grow.
Well, I want to talk about some exciting news also. You've got a book releasing this fall called A Place They Love, Creating Healthy School Culture and Positively Impacting Students. And that's with EduMatch Family. And I'm just so excited for you. So for our listeners, when it comes out, what is the book all about?
So a little backstory about it, and this won't be a long backstory. I'd just gone to the Teach Better conference in 2019. I'd come back. I was blogging a lot. But I started noticing like a theme running through all of the blogs. And that theme was like, make school a place kids love, make it enjoyable, make it safe, make it exciting, make it welcoming. All these things that, when we think about it, all the things that we would love to have, that brings us peace, that brings us happiness, brings us joy. All those things we want to bring to schools, or at least we should be striving to bring those things to schools. I had a former student who said school was never meant to be a prison for kids to just be trapped in all day. Like, it was supposed to be a place that kids love to be. And I love her for saying that. That's the mentality that I have. And so I started looking at it and saying, hey, there's a collection of these blogs that all talk about making school a place that kids love and, that's safe and peaceful and, exciting. So crazy thought, what if I compile them into a book? So I kept writing and, because, I had this mindset of like, oh, I'm just the teacher from New Mexico. Everyone thinks that's part of Mexico. They don't actually realize that's part of the country. I'm from that state. So I was like, well, I don't know. But, she was my girlfriend at the time, but my wife really encouraged me. She's, just do it. Just try it. What are they going to say? No, like, you tried, So she really gave me the confidence to really reach out to some publishing companies. And eventually, I spoke with Sarah from EduMatch, and, she read over it and kind of liked it. And she said, yeah, let's go for it. So I've really enjoyed the whole writing process and working with EduMatch Publishing. They've been so good to me and, just really a great company to work with, great people to work with. And so the book should be out sometime this fall. Don't have a for sure date yet, but I've been told we're looking at a fall release date. If you pick up the book, you'll get to read about the Shut Up and Teach experience. That's a whole chapter in that book.
Nice.
Along with some other really great little nuggets and ideas and just ways that we can make school a place that kids love,
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I'm so excited for the release. And like you said, it's coming out this fall, and I'll be promoting that too because I can't wait to get a copy myself. And then also in the fall, you're going to be joining us for Teach Better 22.
Yes, I am. I'm so excited for that.
So just to let everyone know, you're going to be on Podcast Row with us. So we've got 12 different podcasters. I don't know if you realize this. I don't think I told you. We've got 12 right now. I think we've got a couple more potentially signing up. So we'll probably have like 15 podcasters in Podcast Row, which I don't know if you remember 2019, but we had like this little tiny corner in the conference. And so now we've got a whole wing. It's going to be in this beautiful STEM school. So yeah, I'm super excited, but what are you going to be bringing to the Podcast Row? And then are you speaking at the conference also?
Yes, I'm speaking as well. So yeah, with Podcast Row, I am looking to interview just really whoever.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm going to open it up. If you are going to be speaking at the conference and want to share a little bit about your session with listeners of the Shut Up and Teach podcast, or if you're just attending and want to jump on and say, hey, I've attended this session and this session, and this is what I'm learning. I'm really opening it up to whoever. We want to promote everything going on at the conference and, everything that we're learning, which, if you're not, if you haven't heard about the Teach Better conference, I would encourage you to, look into registering and attending. There's going to be a lot of great speakers there. So yeah, that's the Podcasters Row. I'll be presenting as well, doing a brief TED Talk type presentation about branding your classroom or community.
If someone is going to be in attendance, it's Akron, Ohio, October 14th and 15th, and it's a phenomenal conference in general. 2019 was amazing. It was very special to connect with so many different people, but this is like on steroids. So, for this upcoming conference, if they're coming to your session, what is it? Just a real quick synopsis.
Yeah, so if you attend my session, you're going to learn about branding your classroom and really we could say marketing your classroom, if you will. So I won't give away everything I'm going to be talking about, but I've branded my classroom as the pirate ship.
Nice.
And so the kids, we use language like we don't say line up, we say X marks the spot, and the kids know that that's the lineup. So really when we talk about branding, it's not just like a theme. It's not just like, oh, this is a theme, but we still have like normal classroom language. The language the language changes, the prizes. So I give pirate treasure, it's not like, hey, here's the prize bucket. This is a treasure chest. You get pirate treasure. So, and it's funny, there was one kid last year who only called me the captain. It's like, are we going to the captain? And then there was another class that would just ask, do we have pirate class today? That's really what it goes into. It's promoting it, not just within your classroom, but outside of the classroom. So yeah, that's a little bit about what attendees will learn if they are, they're at my presentation.
Yeah, man, and that's awesome. And it kind of goes along with culture also that you're creating within the classroom. So I love it. So I can't wait to meet you at 2022 Teach Better Conference and have you a part of the Podcast Row. I'm so excited. I can hardly wait. Are you excited that in-person conferences are back? I know I am. In fact, I'm excited to announce that I'll be at the 2022 Teach Better Conference this October 14th and 15th in Akron, Ohio. I'll be recording episodes live in Podcast Row, attending sessions, speaking, and connecting with a whole bunch of amazing educators. It would be awesome if you could join us. Head over to teachbetterconference.com/register and use the code ASPIRE2022 to save $50 off your 2-day registration. I hope to see you in October. I always love asking the guests about actionable items. So for those who are aspiring leaders or current leaders, if there's something they could do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what should they do?
I would say learn to appreciate the staff you work with and really show them that. One of the things I love to do, and it's super simple and it goes beyond this, I'm not just talking just this, but I would leave notes for the teachers and just leave it either in their box or on their door or something like that. Just hey, I noticed the way that you spoke to your kids. It was really kind and respectful. Thank you for being a great teacher for your students. Just something like that, and showing them that appreciation and that encouragement and building them up in that capacity. The other thing I would say, and I go back to what I said earlier, if you see a need, fill it, just because, you're the reading interventionist, or just because you're the art teacher, or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't help that other teacher, right? Just because you're the music teacher doesn't mean you can't help the 5th grade teacher with a math lesson. You know what I'm saying? And so if you see the need, reach out, fill that need, ask, and lead with humility.
Well, if folks are not connected with you on social media yet, as they're pulling their phones out, where can they find you, and what are your handles for social media?
Okay, so I'm most active on Twitter, so that's where I'm going to start. But Twitter and Instagram are actually the same handles. So it's at Carbajal. That's at CARBAELI. So that's at there. You can find me on Facebook. I do use Facebook as well. Just search Elijah Carbajal. And the podcast, Shut Up and Teach, is on pretty much all major platforms. Just pull up your podcast app that you use and search Shut Up and Teach, and you should pop up.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I have all those links in the show notes for you to click on, and make sure that you're following Elijah and check out his podcast. He does a fantastic job with the Shut Up and Teach podcast, and I'm so excited to have you part of Podcast Row. And for everyone's listening, the Shut Up and Teach podcast will have some episodes also right after the conference of the many guests that Elijah has on. So I'm so excited to listen to those. And man, you're just doing some phenomenal things every single day, and I'm just so honored to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Josh.